3 cheers for capitalism. Jim?
In my opinion, you have to take an extreme viewpoint to get noticed, and that's what I think a lot of it is. I started my company for, it was $100. That was my startup capital. That's all I had. And I created over 250 jobs in McHenry County. I mean, have I really done something wrong? I don't know if you get down to the, to the core of it, that's really the issue. I think it's just how this whole downturn has impacted them. And I think when people are that pissed off, they don't know what to do, so they're going to do whatever they need to do to get, the most amount of attention and get their point across. So, but you just see this whole country just getting more and more divided. And, I hope someone can come around and bridge the 2 gaps. So I don't know. It's a sad situation.
I think if you could look closely at these folks demonstrating on Wall Street, you'd find that many of them are the jerks that Don wouldn't hire.
That's right.
I'm still a little confused. I've been occupying Wall Street for 25 years and nobody's noticed. I just don't get it.
More questions? Yes? So the question about giving equity out to all employees, did you do it at the start, along the way? Mike, did you give equity out?
I did, and I wanted to comment on that. First, to answer your question, we did it at the point where we knew, okay, this thing is getting pretty serious. We got venture capitalists come in. I've got CFOs that I'm now, have to give equity to in order to bring them in. So I wanted to make sure that everybody would participate in that in the event of an exit someday. And it was the smartest thing I ever did for the people that helped me build the company, because we, negotiated over percentages instead of dollars, which was a lot easier to do. I could give somebody 0.5%, 0.75% of the company, and that was so much easier at the end, saying, okay, we just sold for $280 million. How does $912,000 sound? I mean, it's just, and I had, friends and family in the business, so I'm very glad that was all said and done ahead of time, because dividing up money, it just leads to bad things. As far as the breadth of who got stock options within the company, I decided that it was everybody from the top person all the way down, to the receptionist. Did I add value or create, incentive for the receptionist by giving her equity? Not at all. It was a nice thing to do. I don't regret doing it. But the entry-level people, which in our case was the customer care people, which were my favorite people in the whole company. Those are the first people to say thank you for their, Christmas bonus, which was, a third of what, the executives got. But so those are my favorite people, but I don't think they really understood the whole stock option thing. And you can explain it to them, you can explain to them stock, but in a non-public situation, I don't think they really got it, and I don't think that was the motivator for them. The motivator for them was just knowing how much I appreciated, what they did. So in my experience, it was a feel-good thing on the entry-level side. It was a necessity on the real high end, and it was the right thing to do for the people that helped me build it.
Jim, what about optionsXpress?
Yeah, we gave options in stock to every employee from day one. And for us, it was critical, because it goes down to who we were as a company and a culture. And the idea of ownership and having everybody at our company being a stakeholder and having that pride of ownership and helping build the company and treat it like their own was critical. And within our company, we made a lot of people very, very wealthy. A lot of people, like secretaries and customer care people, who didn't fully understand equity when they started. Trust me, when we finally sold, they all understood exactly what it was and the value, and it's part of capitalism, and that's how you create wealth, or long-standing wealth, is through equity and ownership in building something and being part of something. So for us, it was critical incorporating the whole teamwork aspect and the culture of our company.
Ron, did your company's equity all around?
When we started both companies, they were not viable. It took a period of time before they became viable. When we brought in key executives, and from the beginning, we would have to give stock options. But we did not start stock options for every employee till we saw we really had something that was worth some value. So you could really say we did from the start, but not from the first day, but from the time that we saw we had a viable entity and we wanted to build the camaraderie in the company we gave. So basically, it was close to the beginning.
Dane, I know you've said about equity that not all your employees might have gotten it, or that they didn't necessarily stay the course. They would get some options and exercise, and that'd be it. And maybe they didn't see that if they had stayed with it longer, they would have gotten more.
I think what you're describing is a fairly small handful of people that had decided as their options grew to hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in many cases, that was more money than they could figure out how to spend the rest of their life, so they might as well retire. We did offer stock options to our salaried team members, every salaried team member. That was part of the compensation package. As soon as we went public in 1981, when common shares could be bought and sold on the market, then we extended it to all hourly team members, simply because it was tough to determine what the value of that stock was until the public started assigning a value to it in the public market.
Yeah, Sheila. What are your current activities?
Well, since I sold TicketsNow, they brought in their own management team, and my successor, I'd probably speak differently about her after a few cocktails, but I just say I didn't care for her. But it was a culture thing, and we got the wrong culture in the company. So I left the company, and so did basically all the entrepreneurial type people. So the company lost a lot of its innovation and entrepreneurial spirit. But so to answer your question, I'm since 2008 now my time is basically split in thirds right now. I do a lot of private equity and private placement deals, a lot of different investments, which I really enjoy doing. I do a lot of options trading, kind of a one-member hedge fund, if you will. And then a third of my time is spent on philanthropy. I'm on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters in McHenry County. I'm also on the board of the Illinois Technology Association, working with a startup charity called Lift Up America out of the West Coast, trying to get them going. And then since I've sold the company, I've dropped 50 pounds. I've got my black belt. I work out every day. So I'm really enjoying the ability to be able to do that and spend a lot of time with the kids and everything else. So I just haven't gotten the itch to jump back in and start something up again, with just having the opportunity to spend a lot of time with my boys are 9, 6, and 5, so they still want to hang around with me. So I'm taking advantage of that.
We saved a lot of money by having Mike provide the security with his black belt here. We didn't need it. Jim, how about you?
I still have my day job. So I started in options trading and a proprietary trading firm. So I'm spending a fair amount of time with that, giving it some of the love that I've neglected over the last 4 or 5 years. And like Mike and many others, I spend a fair amount of time on philanthropy and other civic activities, as well as looking at a bunch of new technology startups and working with some guys at both my trading firm and some other friends of mine within the industry at a variety of technology-enabled services and other opportunities. For me, Bob asked earlier, was I ever afraid of failing? I don't think we ever really had that fear, but I like building things. I never really enjoyed, once the company got to a certain size, worrying about the scale and having so many employees and so many offices, that really the early stage in building a company is what really excites me and wakes me up in the morning.
Ron, do you have a new company you're working on?
We are about to commit to a new company, and my MO is a little different, because rather than private placement and passive investment, we look for companies where we can actually take over, create them, take over the company from the idea of the individuals and build them into something, as opposed to just individual investments in other people's companies. And we've done diligence on a number of companies, and we're very close on one right now.
you want to make an announcement and we'll all keep it quiet?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it's, you might find you'll be eating some of our vegetables one day.
Okay, you heard it here first. Dane, how about you? You were on the board of Biomet.
And then off of it for a few months and then back on again. I'd have to admit my least successful career move was my retirement. I am everything but retired. I serve on a number of company boards and volunteer boards, one of which is the University of Chicago Health Systems. We own an RV manufacturing company in Texas. We own an air charter operation. I help my wife with her NASCAR team only when she asks. I find I get in trouble if I help her without being asked. And my wife and I have learned after 46 years of marriage that it's time we got to know each other a little better. And so we spend time together. We do a fair amount of traveling. But my primary passion is still Biomet. I'm not in the offices day to day. I have a separate office. But when Biomet calls, I'll be there.
Yes, all the way, yes. So when it was a blink in your eye.
Okay, I mean, mine was a little different path. I had a proprietary trading company, and we were looking at a lot of different business models within the industry of internalization, other things that seem very commonplace today, and they were too avant-garde at the time. And one of my partners who had worked in the brokerage industry basically says, well, if we can't beat them, why don't we just start our own? And I was sort of like, can't really be that easy. And we began to think about it, and it really was. So ours was really an add-on to our business. And we always thought, once again, it would be successful and we'd be able to monetize it on the proprietary side. We didn't really have the understanding of the potential scale. And when we got our business plan put together, one of the things we had seriously wrong was the growth trajectory. And we had, like everybody else, a nice little hockey stick that we weren't really sure if we could make, but we really misunderstood the pent-up demand within the industry for the tools and technologies we were developing. I don't know if that answers your question.
Great. Mike, how about you? You loved the idea of being at sporting events, right?
Yeah, it was a passion for live entertainment. When, walking into Wrigley Field and just, coming up the steps and seeing that perfectly manicured grass in the field, that was a high for me. And going to my first, concert, Styx, Paradise Theater, it was just like, oh, it was the best thing ever. And I wanted to be involved somehow in that industry, and it just kind of evolved into the ticket was like the gateway to that whole experience that I love so much. So it just kind of slowly got into that, serving as like a middleman, and I came into this highly, inefficient and fragmented market. And the whole internet came around, and we said, well, let's give that a try, and we just started, putting buyers and sellers together and hit the gas pedal. So originally, yeah, I thought I could make a business out of it and support a family, but I had no idea how big the industry could get.
But literally with you, wasn't it that you got a ticket for $5 and turned around and sold it for 10?
Well, it was a first deal. I'd always comb the classifieds looking for tickets, and Jonathan Brandmeier used to do concerts out at Poplar Creek, so I found, some guy was selling, one guy was wanted, one guy's buying, and one guy's selling, and so I called him. He had 6 pavilion tickets for $30, and I called the other guy, and he was willing to buy them for $35. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is free money. I can spend all day driving to Northbrook and picking up the tickets and then dropping them off in Skokie and making $30 just because these two people didn't know of each other. So that was, that $30 was worth it at the time to spend all day doing that. But that was just kind of like, wow, just the whole inefficiency thing really kind of clicked in my head at that point.
Ron, how about you? First Health, how was it a glimmer in your eye?
I was practicing law and was representing the Medical Society in Joliet, and we were doing pre-admission certification for Medicare. And the doctor, who was my best friend, who was the head of that operation as an aside from his practice, said, let's do it for private industry. That's how we created healthcare cost management and pre-admission certification for private industry. And our first customer was Deere & Company. And there was no blinking. I mean, we just said, we know how to do this, we're going to do it. There was a lot of sweating, and he had the keys to a safe deposit box at the bank. I had guaranteed all the loans. Luckily, we had friends in the banking business who loaned us the money. And we were at the point where he had not paid the last 2 quarterly installments of withholding tax when I was able to raise the money to do the company, and I raised, at that time, a total of $2 million, and it became a $2 billion company, and that was the only money that was raised.
The $2 million.
$2 million.
Dane, how about you? You had a family, you had a great job. Why in the world would you quit and start Biomet?
Our neighbors in Del Mar, California asked that question over and over again. I guess several factors led to our decision it was time to do something. Number one, the orthopedic industry at that time was 95% of the market was owned by 4 companies, which were divisions of very large pharmaceutical companies. I felt that having experience at one of those companies, Zimmer, that I'd seen a company that was more run, technical decisions even were made more by marketing people than technical people, and we felt if we left the decision-making where it belonged, that we could develop a better line of products and stay ahead of the technology. And the final thing that sort of pushed me off the cliff, I was 32 years of age at the time. I knew my fallback position if the company failed, and I knew the probability was quite high that it would fail. I could go back and get a job in a university as professor of bioengineering, and it wasn't too late to start over again. And we felt we would know probably within 3 years, but certainly within 5 whether it was going to work, and I still wouldn't even be 40 yet. Well, I never took that university job, and Biomet made it.
Yes, in the back. You're going to find this to be a very practical crowd. How did you keep your focus on sales?
Well, I think you have to be able to afford to not hit your sales and targets. When I started in my apartment, so I didn't have a huge overhead. I mean, you can't just jump into it with a big lease and a fancy office and a nice new phone system. And, you know, I bought my phone system and, met the guy in a McDonald's parking lot and paid him like $250. I mean, you have to buy things right. And entrepreneurs, at least me, we don't have the plan is just in your head. There's not a laid out sales plan. I wanted to sell as much as I could to whoever I could. And once we started doing that, then we started doing things like, leasing an office on a month-to-month basis for $400. And so I think have a plan, go for your sales, but, be able to afford falling short of that plan too.
Any other thoughts on focusing on?
Well, you're focused on sales. It's pretty easy. It's called revenue. If you don't have revenue, you better start looking at your sales. And it's pretty easy to tell whether you have revenue or not when you get ready to pay the bills.
It is. I mean, when we started, it was easy. We worked with guys like Josh out there. That's your plug, Josh. But we focused a lot on the revenue side. I can control my costs. I can control my employees. I can control the expense side of my business. I go to sleep every night thinking, how do we grow those revenues? How do we grow it through PR? How do we grow it through efficient marketing? And we were very fortunate. When we started, derivatives were the scary word that made the hair on the back of people's neck like stand on end. And these people were very focused. And they were very easy to find because most people didn't want them. So we were able to very target and go after our niche of people very efficiently, very effectively through associations, through PR and good media channels that allowed us to gain a foothold that allowed us to grow.
Dane, I know in your case you can recite revenue at Biomet every year from memory. That's the indication that was front and center?
Absolutely. And I just happen to be good at memorizing numbers. So, but absolutely, you've got to have the revenues. And there were some interesting points made within your leaflet about little tidbits for entrepreneurs. I think one of the keys is know when something isn't going to work and exit fast.
Fail quickly.
Yeah, but on the other hand, don't give up too soon. So it's kind of a tough balancing act. I believe every once in a while I hear somebody say, well, we failed because of lack of capital. We ran out of money. I think lots of companies fail because of too much capital. They start squandering it up front. I believe you can start a business on as little as $10 if your initial goal is to deliver newspapers, make a $10 deposit on a bicycle, and pick up a newspaper route. And if one day you're a Hearst-style publisher, that was a pretty good start.
You hear that, Sophie? Ellie? My daughters are here. How about a round of applause for my daughters here, 12 and 14? Every father gets a chance to embarrass his kids, and now they're going to remember this. Yes.
My niece is here.
A round of applause for Linda. There we go. Yes. Did you have the entrepreneurial spirit when you were very young? Any
Yes.
lemonade stands?
Yes.
You bet.
Long?
Yeah, my first business was buying and selling hay.
Hey?
Yeah, we grew up sort of on a farm. My dad pretended to be a farmer. He went to work, and we would have to bale the hay and all that stuff. So yeah, I started a business, in the off season, buying and selling hay, and then from a young age, that just made sense to me, and it was so intriguing. I have a friend of mine that was he raised German shepherds. He was in 6th grade, and people would come over to his house and give him, a couple $100 cash for this dog. And I'm just like, how do you do that? I mean, that was just so fascinating to me that you could, make whatever you want, sell whatever you want. And so, yeah, even at a young age, that's what I wanted to do or wanted to be when I grew up.
Any other childhood businesses?
Newspapers.
Did you start a business at 10? 16. Okay, good. Are you an entrepreneur? There we go.
Terrific.
More questions? Yes. Patent law changing, first to invent to first to file. Do you see that having an impact? If it passes.
Anything that gives a person a patent is going to change and affect the other person. I mean, whatever they do to speed it up or change who's going to get it is going to affect the industry.
It is. Owning property and intellectual property, I think, is critical to capitalism. As long as everybody understands what the rules are and are playing by the same rules, I think it's good to have it clean, fast, and efficient, is good for business and for the world to respect it.
2 more questions. Yes.
I think culture is critical. So when we ultimately raised some private equity money, we didn't actually take the highest notional value. We found the partner that we thought could add the most value, that had the most consistent views with us, so that we could grow our company in the right direction. It goes back to working with nice people with the same values and same ultimate goal and destination as you do.
Anyone else?
Just to echo what he said, I mean, you've got to find, reference them, talk to companies they've worked with before. I mean, that can become the biggest regret of your life, is getting in bed with the wrong VC, because they've got preferred shares. You can build a company up, and they could come in and just swing for the fences and deplete the value by 75%, and they can walk away whole, and you're left with zero. So just understand the deal and reference the hell out of who you're going to be partnering with and who's going to be on the board.
If you're going to take VC money, get a lawyer who deals with VCs and understands that there's more to it than just the number and how many shares they're going to get. Get somebody who's dealt with VCs. They're called vulture capitalists.
Yeah, there's
Not that Ron has any opinion or slant on this. John Paul.
Yeah, being an entrepreneur can be very demanding. Looking back on it, how well did you balance with your entrepreneurial life, your family life, and any regrets, or what might you have done differently?
Balance with family life or any regrets?
It's really challenging. I mean, it's a lot easier to steal from your family than from your company and your shareholders and your VCs and everybody. But You know, I have no regrets. I mean, you know, it's great to have a family and it's fun, but balance is very difficult, and it's not an equal scale. Sometimes you spend a little more time with the family, sometimes a little more at work, and you just got to make it work. And you know, if it seems like you're trying to fit, you know, 36 hours into a day, you are.
More thoughts, family, regrets, any?
My office, you know, was 7 minutes away from my house, so it made it easier to balance. But I mean, regardless of the situation, you've got to have that balance. I mean, you're probably the only one in your house that really cares if you grow this company huge or not. You know, my wife would be happy as long as we can feed and clothe the kids. She's happy. You know, my kids, they'd rather see you than you know, your dad building a big company anyway. So just, you know, keep in mind who you're really doing it for. You're really doing it for yourself, and you know, so you have to have that balance, and balance means balance, not just a one-sided view of what you think balance is. So, you know, we would just sneak in lunches, or if I was going out of town, sometimes they'd take them with me, if it was a weekend or something. So, I don't have any regrets over that at all. I think I did a good job balancing that.
I think you need a very understanding family, especially a very understanding wife. And if ultimately you are successful, you're going to have a very surprised mother-in-law.
Sharon, what do you think about that comment? My wife's here. Not the mother-in-law, though. I think we're going to call it so everybody has a chance for a little bit of schmoozing. But before I do that, I have to single out Olivia Wolick here. This event was impossible without her work. And thank you, Olivia. And along with Olivia, Denise, Molly, Jeff Weinman, Molly Peters, Denise Barr. Thank you. Thank you all for being here.
I don't know.
Enjoy the cocktails.
Name rings a bell.
You know what the last